here's Brody Brazil.
Major League Baseball definitely has a growing problem on its hands. And some of it is just unavoidable. I understand it's part of doing business and comes with the territory. But the other side of this is dangerous as a business as it relates to fan bases and the epidemic of relocation across Major League Baseball clubs. Yeah, this is a big deal. It's grown lately. And I don't use that word epidemic lightly. I mean, why don't we just get to the definition, because it's very applicable here, as in occurring widely in a community at a particular time. How wide has this epidemic got? I'll show you in just a second. The community is obvious. Major League Baseball owners, the league as a business, in tandem with regional and local government entities. Obviously, there's a lot of public-private partnerships to make Major League Baseball happen in stadiums and venues across the country. But the particular time is right now. The last couple years, the next couple years, there is a lot going on to the tune of 8 different teams right now. 8 of 30. That's 26.7% of the league who is either attempting relocation, like the A's, they've already started the application process, threatening relocation, mentioning relocation, even insinuating relocation, like, hey, we've got a deal to work out here, and if this doesn't go well, we may not stay. And I'm just saying, once you bring up relocation, as a government or as a team or as any big stakeholder in the conversation, once you bring up relocation, it catches eyes and ears. And it's pretty difficult to kind of put back in the box. You can't unsay that. And it does not go over well at all with fans. They're torn. They've become attached and passionate towards a team that's been there for decades, or in some cases, centuries. And now here we are in the 2020s, and because of a business deal or negotiations, somebody wants to take all that away. Now, I understand. Again, going back to the very first thing I said, some of this is unavoidable. It's part of doing business. There are negotiations every day across the world with 2 companies or 2 different parties, and one side wants this, other side wants that. So they're going to negotiate. They're going to take positions and stances that are uncomfortable. So I get it. But in this case, how far down the road does each team get with relocation? Because everybody's at a different spot in the process. So those 8 teams, you know what we're going to do? We're going to dive through every single one of them here. And we're actually going to do this in kind of reverse order. Teams, I think, that are the least likely to actually relocate, but have been connected to that very process. Like the Baltimore Orioles. First off, what a season they're having here in 2023. I hate that this is a distraction for them. 28th lowest payroll in all of baseball entering this season, and as I record this, best record in the American League. But there's the headline: Orioles lease talks expose rift over Camden Yards renovation. The team owner and local officials, they have very different viewpoints on proposed renovation. The lease expiration drawing closer amid a resurgent season for the team, which, like I just said, they're a great story. There is no Orioles lease at Camden Yards for next season. And a lot of these other teams you'll see, they've got a couple years. Like literally, it expires after this season. So obviously something has to get done quick. We've heard comments from the team and from Baltimore and Maryland officials saying this should have already happened. We should not be at this point. The team wants a long-term deal. They've already said, we're not going to leave. We're going to stay, but we want a long-term deal. Camden Yards, you may recall, was entirely paid by public funding back in the day, and it was a game changer. Often imitated, rarely duplicated. The old-style ballpark, it was the first of its kind. It is still one of the gems across the league in terms of stadiums. But now, from what it sounds like to me, there's about $600 million waiting for upgrades and renovations. Sounds to me like government officials want to use that money to fix up the ballpark. The team would rather build out the old, ballpark village. They'd rather spend that money elsewhere, and maybe that makes the project cost more to also fix up the stadium. So there's a disagreement here. I don't know that the Orioles are instantly threatening a move, or that's a possibility. I think we are way far away from that. But like I've said before, this is kind of like a crack in the sidewalk. they start small, and then they grow. Then they spider web out. They go a million different directions. The crack that was no big deal becomes a problem if it's not tended to. So just to be clear, I don't know that we're on the verge of anything disastrous here, but this is kind of how it starts. And the urgency kind of makes it an issue. We'll see what these two sides do. And obviously the Orioles have enough things on their hands right now. This is just one of the few. Then there's the Kansas City Royals, which as of literally today, when I'm recording this on a Tuesday, they're set to unveil ballpark renderings and I believe some more detailed information for two proposed locations, both in the East Village and North Kansas City. They're proposing a $2 billion stadium, of course, with the ballpark district that goes along with it. Team says they're going to spend at least $1 billion, like $1 billion plus. Okay, so I don't know where the other billion is coming from or how that's been allotted or where we're at with any of that. I also want to say that they're trying to get out of Kauffman Stadium, and they have been for a while. Now, it's an old venue, right? It's one of the oldest across Major League Baseball, but it's also kind of like Angels Stadium, where it has been maintained, it has been upgraded over the years. I think within the last decade or so, didn't they host an all-star game? Usually that's a reward in baseball. You fix up your stadium, and as part of it, you get an all-star game to kind of show it off to the rest of the league. Kauffman Stadium, it's old, but like I said, it has been upgraded, it has been modernized. It's not the worst by any means. Now, I'm not saying that the Royals or their fans don't deserve something new. When you get up there in age, like it's from the late 60s, at some point, just like the A's and their fans, you're past due for a new opportunity. But as of right now, totally sustainable. They're entering multiple years of their stadium search. This has been going on for a while, that the Royals have pitched ideas, different spots, but they want to have more of an urban, modern ballpark rather than being out in the suburbs, having the big old 1970s parking lot. So we'll see where this goes. And again, nobody's talking about relocation here yet, but there's going to be an ask, right? There's going to be an ask of, do the math, close to $1 billion, that if the team's not paying for it, how will they get it for this project? Okay, down in Arizona, the Diamondbacks are in active talks on a new Phoenix area stadium. And Chase Field, Bank One Ballpark, opened in 1998. Feels like just yesterday. We're talking 25 years ago. 25 years and we're already like, it's not usable anymore. We've got to do a better job in North America with our sports venues. Look across the pond in Europe and all the soccer stadiums, and largely they can't build there. They're kind of tied in with land and real estate. It's tougher to find a new stadium spot. Plus, they seem more entrenched in their history and tradition over there. Stadiums over there, and don't get me wrong, there are new ones, but largely there's a lot of old ones too. In America, we've got Fenway and Wrigley, and those are kind of our legacy ballparks, and Dodger Stadium, but that's it. So we've got to figure out a way so we build these better, that they last longer than 25 years before a team is trying to get out. The Diamondbacks say upgrading Chase Field is hundreds of millions of dollars in cost. And the team, because of that, they're saying, well, this is going to cost so much to fix this place up. It's almost not worth it. Why don't we spend all that money into a new development? And what do you think they want? Ballpark Village. Everybody wants that trend. They all want to be real estate investors and developers. They all want that situation. Their lease, by the way, ends after the 2027 season, so we can start to see the urgency here. The team is exploring both renovating the stadium, but also, like I said, preferring building a new stadium elsewhere. For years, they've been dealing with a leaky roof situation. Apparently, the leak they can't fix, they can't address. It keeps happening right over the pitcher's mound. That's not good. And downtown for them has never been the best spot. If you've been to the greater Phoenix area, look at the other areas that have kind of grown out and panned out, either in Tempe, Mesa, Scottsdale. I don't know that downtown Phoenix was ever really the greatest home or forever home, but that's where they decided to build it. And again, I I don't know that we're at relocation here, but the team has the ask out there, right? How can we do this? We'll kick in some money, but we need something from you. And that's kind of the trend of everything we've seen so far. All these teams, they're not exactly saying, well, if you don't give this to us, we'll move. But they're saying, hey, we'd like to move. We need this, and we need you. And what do you think the next statement is if we don't get your help? How do you think that's going to go? They're not just going to stay satisfied where they're at. Boy, the Angels, there's a lot of drama here. On the field, off the field. This is an older headline. It's from more than a year ago, but I don't know that this conversation ever completely went away. Discussion of the Angels relocating potentially to Long Beach, closer out towards the ocean. And like I said, lots of drama here. Anaheim, the mayor, I believe, had to resign because of some issues and a little bit of corruption with the Angels trying to buy the land of the Angel Stadium site. They'd actually, I think, prefer to stay where they're at and redevelop the land surrounding their stadium, kind of the parking lot that exists. Again, a team looking for an upgraded ballpark, a new ballpark, and a ballpark village to surround it. By the way, the on-field drama, you've got a team with Trout, and they didn't trade Shohei Ohtani. Is he gone? Is he just going to be a free agent? Did they let him walk away and get nothing for it? They haven't made the playoffs since 2014. My goodness, that's on the field. But all of this stuff is off the field. I mentioned the Angel Stadium site issues. The team had tried to purchase the land. They had tried to get that going. It all fell through. And as soon as it fell through, Long Beach said, hey, you want to come on over? We've got a spot for you. This could be enticing. The team was reportedly for sale. Then reportedly it's not for sale. Their current lease at Angel Stadium expires in 2029. So I think you're going to see the urgency get stepped up here. If nothing happens in 23 or 24, all of a sudden 2029 is right around the corner. And I just don't think there's a lot of Los Angeles options, Southern California options here. We're talking about LA. And although SoFi Stadium just went up, I know the Clippers are getting a brand new arena, there's not a lot of land opportunities to, just plop down a stadium on 30, 40, 50 acres in the ballpark village that every team wants. Again, I think the Angels' preference is to stay in Anaheim. They've kind of already gone towards that, but they are having a ton of complications with Anaheim and with themselves, quite honestly. And even if this is just a move from Anaheim to Long Beach, does that really affect the fan base? Probably not really. I equate it to the Golden State Warriors of the NBA. They started in San Francisco, then they moved out to the East Bay in Oakland, and then recently, they moved back out to San Francisco. Fans in Oakland can still go to a game. Now, it's not their favorite thing that the Warriors up and left, but it's also not like they are inaccessible. They're still around, and they did not leave the region. It would be kind of that same thing here. It would be a different style of relocation. And again, all these teams have different scenarios, so that's why I'm kind of spelling all of them out. The Brewers recently, this came out a couple weeks ago, may threaten to leave Milwaukee. Well, I think they did threaten to leave Milwaukee if Wisconsin taxpayers don't fund stadium upgrades per a report. That came out from the Milwaukee Sentinel Journal, Sentinel Journal. I think I got that right. The stadium, American Family Field, which opened in the early 2000s, needs $450 million of upgrades and repairs. Now, it only cost, I think, $400 to build. Here we are about 20-something years later, it needs another $450 pumped into it. Now, they have plainly hinted relocation. I think the quote from an anonymous team source, which, come on, put your name to it. The comment was, well, we'd love to stay here, but we think the stadium authority is broke, and that might be difficult to do. They're going to claim that their agreement with the stadium authority spells out some high-class ballpark. And look, it is important every 20 years to upgrade a ballpark. It really is. Look at the Oakland Coliseum. In the 80s and 90s, nothing changed, nothing improved. In fact, it only got worse as a multi-purpose venue rather than a Major League Baseball facility. And because of it, now here we are in 2023, and it's well past its expiration date, no question about it. So I can appreciate the forward thinking and the desire to improve it, but at the same respect, the Brewers are going to taxpayers and saying, well, we need this. We'll kick in some, but if you don't kick in the rest, I think it's $290 million. There it is. The governor has proposed spending $290 million in upgrades of public money. And the Brewers are saying, if we don't get this, Charlotte, Nashville, they're just throwing cities, they're picking cities out of a hat and saying, we might go there. So relocation here has been insinuated, hinted, mentioned, all of the above. Their current lease goes through 2030, so that's also a factor here. It seems like if they don't get upgrades in a couple years, or at least the process started, they're going to take that first crack in the sidewalk and start to spiderweb it out and extend it. I said this all along. When this came out recently, I looked at it and I don't have any connections to the Brewers. I don't have anything relating to them that would make me feel one way or another. But because of this and because how I see it's playing out, now I want the Brewers to stay. I'm instantly on their side. Oh, and then there's this, which came out, I think, just yesterday. White Sox ponder a move from their South Side home. The Cubs are the team in Chicago that are, connected to history and tradition. Well, don't forget the White Sox. They've been there for 123 years. And their lease at Guaranteed Rate Field, I almost said U.S. Cellular, I almost said New Comiskey, it ends in 6 years. And so they're kind of waving the flag saying, well, no, we haven't had any discussions yet. We're getting a little nervous over here. They, of course, would also like to do something bigger, better, bolder, greater in Chicago. They'd like to take the next step. And of course, they've seen what the Cubs did. They totally renovated Wrigley Field. It's historic, and now it's been even preserved for more decades to come. Jerry Reinsdorf, their owner, also owner of the Chicago Bulls, getting up there in age, and there's some rumors that he could sell the White Sox, keep the Bulls, but sell the White Sox. So even more instability to this franchise. Would somebody want to buy them and keep them in Chicago, or would he say, hey, somebody in Orlando, you want to buy the White Sox? You remember, the White Sox were one of the teams that almost became the Tampa Bay team back in the early 90s. And then the Giants were literally out the door to Tampa, and then they weren't. So relocation here has been strongly hinted. This is not a situation of, we'll get it done. This is a situation of, hey, we're here, we got to get this going, and if we don't, we're already looking. I don't want to speak for anybody, but that's kind of the way it's been presented. Okay, and then we get into the big two, so to speak, Tampa and eventually Oakland. First, the Rays. Headline here says, will the Rays leave Tropicana Field? Orlando Magic co-founder hopes to lure MLB team and the Rays with a $1.7 billion stadium pitch. This is a three-team fiasco. You've got Tampa. You've got St. Pete, where the Rays currently play and have had their only home as the Suncoast Dome and now Tropicana Field. And then you've got Orlando, which has entered the fold, as you see here. I'm not sure what Orlando is trying to do. They want a baseball team. They would take an expansion team, but that's way too close to Tampa. That's like a 90-minute drive. That would be a third different team in Florida. I'm not saying they're not capable of it. I just don't know how baseball would feel about, Tampa's already a small market team, kind of. And now you'd be putting competition right up the road in Orlando. Anyway, the Trop has always been bad. It was built before the Rays were even a thing. It was built so that Tampa could try and lure in other big league teams. I think the Mariners, obviously I mentioned the Giants and White Sox, and there were a couple others that almost went to Tampa. But here's the deal. And when I say Tampa, I got to be clear about this. To St. Pete, right? The issue, which I understand right now, is that it's kind of like Oakland. Howard Terminal is maybe the more desirable spot. That's Tampa. Where they're at right now is St. Pete, which is kind of like the Coliseum site. St. Pete might be easier to do, but it sounds like the team is more interested in finding the opportunity to get out to Tampa rather than staying in St. Pete. So you've got this argument, this conversation, which in itself has a lot of voices and a lot of problems there. Now you've got Orlando entering the fold to complicate that even more. Because if either one of these two don't work out, Orlando would like to snatch them. The Rays lease at the Trop ends in 2027. And I'll just make this final comment. It always seems like in the recent, 3 or 4 years when relocation is mentioned in baseball, it's always the A's. A's are first. A's are first. A's are on the forefront. The Rays are like right there in the same issue, but they're never really talked about in the same way like, oh, this is so urgent. Baseball never said, well, we're telling the Rays to explore Orlando or any other Charlotte or any other market. It's interesting how the A's have been kind of like pushed and forced, and the Rays are kind of like they're jogging. Like the A's are either because they want to or they're being told to. They're sprinting at this point. Versus the Rays, who are kind of taking a little saunter down the road. They've always been behind the A's in this process. And then I said I was doing this in order. We get to the number one, like, imminent team and situation here. The A's right now, and the headline, I think this is a Las Vegas headline, says it perfectly. Fate of the Oakland A's relocation rests in MLB's hands. Specifically, the owners, they'll have to vote on this. It's 75% yes. That's what's needed to approve the relocation application, which I also don't know if that's complete yet. Who knows? This is all behind-the-scenes process. There's a relocation committee, 3 teams, representatives of the Brewers, the Royals, and the Phillies, and they'll review the application. They'll make a recommendation to the owners. The owners will eventually vote yes or no. More on that in just a second. But this is like an almost 20-year-old saga. Fremont, San Jose, a couple sites in Oakland, different A's ownership groups, different government entities. There have been so many ships crossing in the night here that just missed each other. Honestly, I feel like the A's were excited to do Howard Terminal, then the city wasn't. And all of a sudden the city got excited, and then the A's got unexcited. There have been like no breaks for the future of the A's, like positive breaks. There have been no real great developments, no game changers in all of this. In fact, all of the game changers have gone the other way, like the change of heart. April 19th, that story breaks at night. The A's are turning their back on Oakland, putting all their focus on Las Vegas, when they were reportedly only days away from having a high-level summit, a final negotiation to try and hammer out details with a mediator and everything. And the A's said, nope, we're not doing that. The Nevada public funding has already happened, $380 million from the state and from Clark County. And there's some challenges to that, I know. This would be an inconvenient move in a sense that you're already going from a large market, and you say you're a small market team, going to the smallest MLB market. Not to mention, you can't even play in your new stadium, until at least 2028. Well, it's 2023. 24, you're in Oakland for sure, but where are you for 25, 26, and 27? And there are not a lot of great options. There's not. But this is the most immediate and most imminent situation in Major League Baseball. And because of that, however Major League Baseball decides on this apparent vote, the A's are kind of like a pivotal domino situation here. Let me explain that. The line is growing. I just showed you 8 total teams, like more than a quarter of baseball, which is saying, hey, we need something. We're leveraging here. We're starting this process, which begins with, we need help. And then it turns into, well, we might leave if we don't get help. And then it's full-fledged like the A's, who are hiring a construction company and working on renderings and have the public funding approved, all that stuff. The line is growing here. It's not just 1 or 2 teams. This is an epidemic in baseball, but it's a big precedent to set. What owners might actually vote on here, but not just the A's. They've got to see through this. They've got to see past this. What about all the other teams? The Chicagos, the Milwaukees, the Angels, the Royals, the Orioles. What about those teams that are also down the line of this process? It's a big precedent to set. Should it be easy to relocate? Do owners across the board, and I don't know the answer. We're going to find this out. But this vote is no longer just about the A's. This vote is about a precedent across Major League Baseball. Do you want your teams to be able to up and leave? And do you want it to be like, well, the A's did it, so the Rays can do it. And you know what? The Rays did it, so the Brewers can do it. And the Brewers did it, so the White Sox can do it. Does that create some instability? Does that create animosity with your fan base? Does that create more bad situations than good ones? Remember, there's a reason why only one franchise has relocated in the last 50 plus years across Major League Baseball. There's also a reason why, outside of the Montreal Expos, every other city that's lost a team has either gotten a team back or had another team already in place. So do you want it to be easy to relocate? Also, this is also a big one, do you want the A's to move without a relocation fee? Because if there's not one here and the Rays want to go to Orlando, you think there's going to be a fee there? There can't be. And Milwaukee wants to go to Charlotte? No relocation fee. Chicago wants to go to Portland? No relocation fee. So the decision that's made here, if it comes to that, for the A's, and I think it will come to that, they will force this issue. They will force the vote. I mean, the process has already started. But when they get to this, it's no longer just a decision about the A's. I mean, sure it is about that scenario and how it could play out. But all of a sudden, because so many teams have lined up here, this is more of an issue about the future of baseball and what teams are allowed to do, the precedent that will be set by this vote. So again, kind of an epidemic of relocation in baseball. I know a lot of you out there as fans watching in different markets, you're not thrilled by this, and you're not supposed to. It's a part of business, but it shouldn't get to this point this often. You made it here to the end of the video. I appreciate that so much. Thumbs up down below, and don't forget, subscribe to this channel so I can definitely see you back here next time.